Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Generative Edge. My name is Brandon Eichaner. I'm the Natural Language Processing and Generative AI Practice Lead for Deloitte Central Europe, and I'm joined today by my two co-hosts, Donovan.
Hi, Donovan here. I'm an AI and data partner at Deloitte, and I look after the lovely relationship we have with AWS here in Central Europe.
And we've got Vyas from AWS.
Hi, everyone. My name is Vyasaraj Kulkarni, but you can call me Vyas. I'm the Enterprise Technology Leader with AWS. I work with customers and partners to accelerate our customers' journey to cloud. Happy to be here.
And we're joined by a special guest today, Dr. Susanne Seitinger from...
Our honored guest.
And
the first guest on this podcast in this series.
Yeah. She's the Director of AI and ML Product Marketing at AWS. And Susanne, I don't know if you want to talk a little bit about yourself.
I would love to. Brandon, Vyas, Donovan, it's so great to be here today. I wish I could be sitting there right in the room with you, but we'll make this conversation as personable as possible, even over the internet. I lead the product marketing team here at AWS, and I have the great privilege of working with a bunch of really excited product marketers who are positioning and working with our latest and greatest generative AI innovations from AWS. And we work with customers across the globe to help them go faster with our products and capabilities. And my background is interdisciplinary. I come from the MIT Media Lab, where I did my PhD on human-computer interaction and smart cities. And I'm just so excited to be part of this latest innovation wave that we're experiencing with generative AI.
And it is exactly that, Suzanne. It is great to have you here. Thank you for your time. Let's get straight into it. I've got a question for you right up front. We're here in Central Europe. You know, we're on the ground here in Europe, and it's so cool to have someone from that side of the world. And I think this early adoption always that happens in the US. So we'd like to ask you, what are your typical customers doing today in this space? I mean, you've worked across EMEA, you're working deeply in the US. What are the challenges you're seeing? What are the key themes that you're seeing your customers employ GenAI in? Maybe talk to us a little bit about that if you can.
Yeah, 100%. So if you think about it, a lot of the excitement started around the time when generative AI and large language models became really accessible to a broad swath of folks, where they really experienced the power of these models and their ability to generate language, right? To generate that next word, that next phrase. And so it became this very remarkable capability that suddenly sparked a whole bunch of companies and organizations to experiment with and leverage generative AI. A lot of scenarios like customer experience situations, internal knowledge management systems were rethought, new ways of making data accessible through different kinds of chat interfaces that were really much more powerful and unlocked kind of this capability. It made it very, let's say, tangible for folks across the organization, both very technical folks, business leaders, you know, at all ages, right? And all experience levels. And so that was, I would say, 2023. And then in 2024, we've seen this real shift happen where organizations are starting to deploy technologies in production. They're thinking about how to take this and actually put it to full-time use, if you will. It's no longer an experimental thing. It's not a POC. It's moving into production use cases. And it really encompasses very diverse use cases from, you know, all the way from finding new kinds of drugs in the pharmaceutical industry through shifting how financial crimes are investigated to thinking about how to find the best HR information that an employee might need within an organization based on their role and their access rights. And so you have this broad set of use cases that are truly coming to fruition and that are being productized within organizations and for end users of a lot of our customers. And so it's an exciting time, and it's remarkable how quickly that shift has happened, right? That has happened in record time, all the while the innovation hasn't stopped. You know, the new models keep coming, the new capabilities keep coming on top of that. We're deploying more guardrails, more security, all these things that are also needed to take things into production are also, keeping pace with the level of excitement, innovation that we've seen around generative AI.
That's really exciting. And I think, over this side of the world, we see exactly the same things, maybe a little bit behind. But I think we're also coming out of that whole POC experimental phase now. We're starting to see use cases enter production. We see a lot of software companies really trying to embrace GenAI in terms of their feature sets towards their clients. I think any organization that's rich in data, documentation, like you mentioned, knowledge base. I think this is like the number one use case we see, which is really, really exciting. We were just talking offline about a really interesting use case locally with an airline company using that knowledge base approach for ground control, supporting pilots, enhancing the customer experience and the time spent of getting passengers off planes. So it's really an exciting time this side of the world as well. Why AWS? Maybe let's ask that question. You mentioned guardrail security. I know you guys well. You're an enterprise giant. You care so deeply about your enterprise clients. Why AWS, and why should people care?
Now you're hitting the heart of the discussion.
Let's get right to it, right? You all don't mince words. Here's the thing. It's pretty simple, right? If you think about it, for generative AI, you need all the innovation, all the security, and all the availability and reliability that you're used to and accustomed to from AWS. And as we approach this, we are thinking security, sovereignty, and sustainability. And those three things are fundamental to how we approach technology and how we've been doing that for the last 17 years.
When we talk to our customers, right, so one of the key things they talk about is security, especially when it comes to this domain, right? So when you speak to the customers, how do you tell them that this is the right thing to do even today? And what's your pitch, especially on AWS, for that?
I mean, security is the most important thing that we focus on, right? It is the absolutely ground level, where we start. And one of the things that, you have to keep in mind is that every single one of these capabilities that I just described is designed for the most secure and the most available capabilities all in one. So for example, if you think about Amazon Bedrock, the level of instrumentation that we have with the integration with CloudWatch and CloudTrail, where you can actually observe all of your applications in action, is critical for organizations to have that peace of mind that this generative AI application won't start doing something that I don't want it to do. And having that mindset as we develop all of our tools and capabilities is absolutely critical. At the infrastructure level, we've innovated with our chips, where we've really thought, and our instances and our accelerated capabilities, our clusters. And so looking at how we've actually implemented security at that level so that, for example, customers can be comfortable with allowing these large language models to interact with their data and knowing that nothing will leak, that nothing will end up being trained with data that they didn't want. That is absolutely critical, especially if you're thinking about regulated industries, or you're thinking about domains where you have to be 100% able to at all times report on what's going on with your system. And so because we thought about it that way from the get-go, because we have that longstanding history, and because we continue to iterate on behalf of customers, we are really able to deliver that level of security and allow customers to sort of essentially select where they are in their risk profile, essentially, to then select the right use case and then go and build it with all of the capabilities that I was just describing.
That's awesome, right? That sounds fantastic.
Listen, I mean, I've worked with you guys long enough to know that you live out your values of customer obsession, right? Totally. And we hear security, we hear guardrails, we hear these things, not always the most exciting topics, but they are very important, and they are the cornerstone and building blocks of how we develop. Maybe let's take a practical example. Can you take a client where these things were key to their decision making in picking AWS technologies to build on? Could you talk us through an example like that, perhaps?
Yeah, 100%. Take an organization like Intuit, who have a long history of working with machine learning and data, and they've been working with Amazon SageMaker for quite a while. Amazon SageMaker is a platform, a tool service that allows you to build and train and deploy machine learning models in very effective and efficient and scalable ways. And so Intuit had been working with Amazon SageMaker for a very long time, very familiar also with how we operate our infrastructure. And then along comes, Amazon Bedrock and large language models and more capabilities. And they've been actually able to leverage both Amazon Bedrock and Amazon SageMaker to really rethink how they support small businesses, how they provide new kinds of AI-based tools for tax season, which happens around April in the United States. And they've done this for very sensitive, challenging use cases where they've then, felt comfortable because they were able to, move quickly, unlock, capabilities with access to various large language models, and then on top of that, also have the security and guardrails available. And that's accelerated their ability to innovate by several orders of magnitude, because they were just able to go much, much faster. And that's what's been so important with Bedrock, because it provides access to multiple models. One of the things that I was talking about earlier, in order to really be able to keep pace with the rate of innovation, you want to have access to the best models and the most appropriate models for your use case at all times. And that's why we always started with this idea around Amazon Bedrock to have choice, have multiple models available. And that's where we leveraged Amazon Bedrock to make today are arguably some of the best models available on the market. For example, we just released Anthropic's Claude 3.5 model, which provides you even more capabilities for much less cost. And suddenly, folks are just, they're amazed by how quickly things continue to evolve and how easily it is for them to stay, current as a result of Amazon Bedrock's model. And so it's been exciting to see that evolve very, very quickly. And for customers like Intuit to take advantage of that and go faster in turn.
Fantastic. So Donovan and Brandon, do you see something similar in your customers? What's your Deloitte's viewpoint on that? We'd love to hear that.
Well, I actually want to support what Susanne just said, which was the access to multiple models at the same time makes a huge difference, because in some of our implementation projects, generally what happens is you'll start with one model and want to experiment with others. There are standardized benchmarking tests for most commercially available large language models, and you can see it on the web. So it'll tell you how good certain models are at certain tasks, but the reality is you get into enterprise and you need to build out something really specific, and that specific use case isn't targeted by any of those benchmarking tests, right? So you really have to run your own. And if you're doing it with other service providers, you have to wait for the IT team to deploy another endpoint, configure the model. You need to update your prompts. You need to update the parameters, whatever, a bunch of technical stuff. With Bedrock, it's a unified API experience. You can test out different models. You don't have to wait for new deployments. It really does make the process less painful.
It's music to my ears.
Yeah. I think the customers that are already in the AWS ecosystem, I think naturally gravitate there. I think, to be a little bit more provocative here, I think, there was some earlier adoption and everyone was able to play with earlier GPT models. And I think there was just some natural incline for people to start using, other parties outside of the AWS platform. But I think now that we've sort of come through this whole testing, POC, and we're really thinking about production and industrializing use cases, you're starting to see some of these questions: security, where does my data sit? How do I control my data? Guardrails, the legal frameworks around this. And we're seeing already a lot of conversation in this space. And I'm actually quite surprised, if I can, for a second here, Deloitte's a complicated organization, but the conversations we're having around GenAI is not specific to our consulting technology practice here. I'm talking like our legal and tax leaders are leading in these conversations, because this is where rubber meets the road. They know that these industries will ultimately need to embrace and explore these technologies. But when you're dealing, like you said, Susanne, with sensitive personal information, security is like at the highest priority. Guardrails will become very, very important. So I think now, as we're starting to see that more production use cases coming through, this is becoming a huge part of the conversation.
I see this really I see a common theme between how smartphones sort of came out, and there was this competition, between originally like Microsoft and Apple basically won because they came out with the iPhone 6 months before, the Windows Phone came out or something. Bill Gates made some comment to the effect of, if I had only been, 6 months faster with the smartphone stuff, then I would have been, like, my name would have been on everybody's smartphone, right? But then you fast forward 10 years, and of course, course, it's not that iPhone is still dominating as it did at the beginning, right? The smartphone market, and with generative AI, it's kind of the same thing. So Azure did technically make it faster to like access to GPT, but if you fast forward a couple of years and you see that everyone is not just, they don't just want access to the models. They want the security, they want accessibility, they want everything else that comes with it. And as time progresses, you'll see sort of this, somebody else will come out on top effectively. Yeah.
I think that's an important point, and I'll put that back to you, Susanne, right? So I think there's this fundamental notion that we're perhaps late. Is that true? What's your take on that?
It's not true. I think as Brendan was saying, there is a long road ahead, and especially as we think about organizations leveraging this technology for a broad swath of use cases and businesses and organizations, there's a long road ahead and a lot of excitement. There's a reason why 90% of the Forbes AI 50 are AWS customers, or 96% of AI unicorns are building on AWS, or 9 out of 10 pharmaceutical leaders are building their generative AI applications and building on AWS. So it's absolutely the case that customers are flocking to our approach, and specifically things like model choice that Brendan was alluding to, as well as all the strengths that you get by being inside your AWS VPC or inside your environment, where you actually know how to, for example, unlock capabilities for all of your developers, all of the users across the organization. That's where companies like BT are using Amazon Q, for example, to really shift the situation where, the acceptance rates, for example, of inline code suggestions are much, much higher, and where we're delivering the very best capabilities to actually generate entire features. Or we have game-changing security scanning capabilities in Amazon Q Developer, which is actually arguably the most critical thing that you want one of these coding tools to provide for your developers. And so all of these things together make for a package of capabilities that I think is truly leading the way. And I want to come back to, I'd love to hear more about what you all are thinking around this, because Deloitte, I think, has thought about the different users and personas in an organization quite deeply. And I think that is absolutely critical. The innovation is coming from, the IT leadership within an organization, but it's also coming from the chief data officer. It's coming from a newly appointed chief AI officer. It's coming from the head of HR, the CFO. All these functions, as well as different lines of business, are looking for ways to leverage this technology because they've experienced it themselves in their day-to-day. They can see how useful it is, at home, and they know that there are many use cases that this would apply to in their work environment, but they have to do it securely, privately, and compliant.
And if I can, pull the curtain back a little bit, I'll be quite open and honest. Deloitte Central Europe said this is a game-changing technology across our entire business. We appointed a senior partner to spearhead this exact agenda. And again, it wasn't driven from an IT perspective at all. It was day zero, meet with the head of legal, head of tax, head of audit and assurance, head of financial advisory services, understand their businesses, and just bring simple conversation, efficiency, productivity, customer experience type of use cases, ideation, thinking.
Totally.
And the technology was left sort of second, but it was like, how is our business going to change in the next year, 5 years, 10 years, embracing this technology? And the reason why we took that stance, if I can steal the light for another 10 seconds here, is because we said we need to understand how to do this. If we're going to go out there and say, this is what we're encouraging our customers to do, then we want to be the blueprint and say, this is what worked for us, this is what didn't work for us. Right. These are the challenges. We're a risk-averse organization by default, as having all the audit regulations. So what are the hurdles, challenges we would work through, and how would we comment, recommend, and encourage our clients in the marketplace?
I mean, you've got to walk the walk, right? That's what you're saying. And I can speak to, how my own team, we've been leveraging this capability in-house. We just did a team offsite last week. We actually, one of my team members, Joe Fontaine, he created this little application in a platform called Party Rock, which I would check out. Anyone can use it. It's very easy. You just need a social login. And he built a brainstorming application that then allows you to remix ideas. He sort of placed, we're marketers, right? So it asks you about your target audience, where you're thinking about going, asks you for examples. And it's an application that is tailored to what our team needed last week. He, framed it up really well. It enabled others to remix it. So, it sort of is a starting point. That's the other thing, right? These things are never done. It's a very iterative technology in a way that I'm not sure other technologies have been so kind of accessible, and it's for iteration in a quick paced way. And experiencing the team get really excited. I mean, we did a brainstorming exercise that I think normally would have taken half a day in an hour. And I think it was just as fulfilling, just as exciting. And we built this application ourselves, and any organization can do the same thing. And that's what's so empowering right now. You don't need to be, deeply steeped in machine learning in order to take advantage of some of these capabilities. And if you translate that to the enterprise, there's tons of equivalents, more of these examples, many, many, many.
I love that idea, right? I think that kind of brings in the inspiration for the teams to actually start doing something different. But Donovan, a question to you, right? So while you interact with the customers here, what are some of the challenges which you hear from them, which is perhaps impeding them to move into this technology?
Yeah, and I would probably also push this on to Susanne just to see what she's seeing. But, regulation is always a problem. We're seeing adoption generally of cloud services, depending on which industry you're in, is still a tough conversation. You still find gatekeepers around security. You still find some territoriality, if I can frame it that way, around infrastructure. I think some of this is now being overcome. I've just walked the road with a client over the last 4 months where the first interactions were pretty cold from the IT space. And, slowly we just started to talk through the agility that the cloud can bring. And they started to ask questions, and it was just really good. And we've brought them on this journey where they really want to embrace it now and start building a center of excellence internally. And so, I think this is still a battle. I think legally, and this is where I'd pose to you, Susanne, legally, we still have this conversation around where is my data going? Is my intellectual property staying with us? You would have been a little bit ahead the curve, I think, on the US side. Can you talk to that? Are these some of the challenges you're seeing?
Yeah,
well, have overcome?
It's an exciting time for this work, right? Because it is all based on different use cases, risk profiles, and when you're innovating this quickly and things are changing this quickly, it's hard to keep pace as a regulatory body. One of the things we're excited about, it's just been a year that we were at the White House and we participated in the voluntary commitments to secure AI going forward, secure and responsible AI. And so we've just sort of took stock of what we've been doing to ensure that everything we do is built responsibly and ethically, and that we're also providing the kinds of support for our customers that they need. Look, at the end of the day, this is process, it's people and technology. It's all of the things together. It never is just the technology itself. And no more so is that true than with generative AI. And so I love how we're approaching, for example, use case based, contextually, grounded approaches to responsible deployment of generative AI. It's always about the context and the situation. And that's, the EU AI Act is thinking about it along those lines, along the lines of risk profiles, along the lines of use cases. And that is the right approach. And it is all about the community globally working together so that we have coherent ways of thinking about this. But it's also about innovation within your particular geography, within your ability to have a sovereign cloud if you need that, if you want that, and that we're absolutely committed to that, and we've been very outspoken about that. And in addition to all of our collaborations and partnerships with companies like Mistral AI, right, the French company that really blew away a lot of folks with their incredible models, and they also continue to innovate, and working with innovators like them who bring a diverse perspective to the table is so critical for us to be successful, as a society as we leverage this technology. And the other thing that folks like Deloitte are doing is tailoring and customizing the AI to the use case. Your C-suite AI platform is just really awesome how it thinks about the CFO as a function in a company and providing tailored models that know about what CFOs do. That means when you ask it a question about the latest Taylor Swift album, it's not going to answer. Even though...
Why not?
Oh, no.
I can find a CFO that will know.
Probably not something you should do. But, that's a joke, obviously, but
Well, you've obviously got tickets, Susanne.
How these things operate and training them on the expertise that organizations and people have built with their data is absolutely critical. And C-suite AI does just that, and it leverages Amazon Bedrock under the hood, which is exactly leveraging that model Brendan was talking about earlier.
So, Susanne, like if I could ask you to encourage, enlighten, put at rest maybe some of the angst that comes with this topic to the typical executives that would be running large organizations in Europe, in Central Europe specifically. What are some of the tangible next steps, things you would say that they should embrace, not be fearful of, words of encouragement perhaps in this space? What would you leave with?
Yeah, no, I mean, I totally. I think, the thing is, start now. There is the only risk is not starting. Like, that is the biggest risk. Not starting, not getting involved, not teaching and learning about how this technology operates is the biggest risk. So of all the risks, that is the one that should be exciting for you. You should be excited to jump in, and then pick use cases that make sense for you and your organization. The second thing is, you have data and knowledge about your organization. You know your business better than anyone else. And generative AI that is tailored leverages data. That's exactly what your C-suite AI capability does. It's fine-tuned models that are trained on all that experience that you've accumulated in the financial sector. And so having that built in, so leveraging your data is absolutely critical. The third thing I would say is figure out where you are on the, say, maturity and comfort level with the technology. Do you have a data team? Do you have an ML team? Do you have developers who are eager to get going? Find the group and the advocates that are most excited, and then also find partners like Deloitte and AWS who can help you to get started quickly where you have gaps. We offer training, we offer education, we have executive visioning capabilities. We have all different types of support alongside partners like Deloitte who are part of our Center of Excellence, right, around the globe with 60 different partners. Find those partners that can help you get started quickly and meet you where you are. And then, I would just say, you yourself, use it. Don't think that someone else in your organization needs to show you how to use it. Go grab Party Rock, play around with it, see how simple it is to build an app, and then go and deploy Q apps in your organization as quickly as you can.
We were talking about it offline. We were just saying there are many use cases you can implement at a no-code level.
Yeah.
It's just go there and play. And to your point earlier, Susanne, the barrier to entry now is so low. Anyone can play with it. Anyone can touch it. You guys have done a fantastic job at making that accessible to people. It's really cool. I love when I have people from all over my business talking to me saying, I just built this model on my own, just quickly, and I know we've used your AI. You've got like an AI use case portfolio as well that we've shared internally with our teams, just helping per industry look at what are the types of use cases globally. That's something that you guys offer as well, right?
Indeed. I mean, I just love the summary what Susanne mentioned, right? Yeah. Like, it's as simple as just 4 points. Start now. You're more ready than you think you are. Experiment, just use it. I mean, it's as simple as that. And I think To do all of that, you have the right tools and technology. I mean, you just need 5 minutes to create your first application using Party Rock, and then just get going.
You'll be hooked.
Yeah. Exactly. So
yes, go out and explore.
that is a great note to end on. So I want to thank Susanne again for being with us today.
Yeah, super cool.
Great.
Great
Thank
to
you so
see
much
you
for
all.
taking the time.
Thank you, Susanne.
And we will see you guys next week.